Welcome into Shot and Vipp, a podcast brought to you by Inside Carolina this college football season. I'm Taylor Vippolis. He's Jeff Schoettmer. We are both Carolina football lettermen, breaking it down game by game. Shot, before we get started today, I have to remind everybody that we've moved our website. We're all part of the new site on On3. It's the same staff, the same standard, just a new home on the On3 network. You'll need to create a new account, and you can join now for just $1. Go to InsideCarolina.com to learn more. Shot, Carolina wins. They go on the road. Bill Belichick wins his first conference game at Syracuse. Carolina wins 27-10 on Halloween. I understand you were on the road for this game. You were in Miami. What was your viewing experience like?
My viewing experience was great because I was in a hotel room and I was able to get ESPN. If I was back home in Dallas, I have YouTube TV, so I wouldn't have been able to watch the game. So thank God I was traveling for work and got to spend the weekend in Miami. But I got to give a shout out. So I'm at the JW Marriott in Brickell. It's Friday night, Halloween. Years ago, Shot would have been out and about, Halloween costume, out on the town. But, things are looking different these days. And I wanted to watch the Heels on Friday night. And so anyway, I go down, I order some food to the hotel, and I'm, got a pizza ready to go, and I'm going down to the hotel lobby to pick it up before the game starts. And there's a guy holding the elevator, and I get in, and he's kind of looking at me. I think I don't know the guy, but as the elevator door shuts, he's like, "You're Shot?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, what's up, man?" And he's like, I listen to you and Taylor's podcast all the time. And so we just start shooting the shit a little bit. And his son, I think he's currently at UNC, but always cool to run into a fan. He's former military, so I thanked him for his service. And I'm blanking on his name. I think it may be Dan. I told him at halftime I'd come meet him in the hotel bar for a drink. Went down there, he wasn't there anymore. I'm sure he had bigger and better plans, but just very random. I run into to a Tar Heel fan in the lobby of the Miami airport, and or not Miami airport, Miami hotel. So it kind of caught me off guard, but I always appreciate when people are listening to us from all parts of the country, and we appreciate everyone's support. So that was a cool story I had to share.
Yeah, we need him to reach out to us on social media, whoever he was, but appreciate everybody that watches and listens. I have the same reaction even when I go back to Chapel Hill sometimes. Like, we do these podcasts, we're talking 20, 30, 40 minutes sometimes. They get published, and you kind of forget that people go out and listen to it, because it does sometimes just feel like two friends catching up and
Yep.
just having a conversation. So yeah, it's always awesome when people come up and tell us that they listen to this podcast and like this podcast and like what we're doing. But Shot, I mentioned it, Carolina, they get their first ACC win. They're 1-3, a couple of bounces away from this team being potentially 3-1 in conference play, with the only loss being to Clemson, but they're not. They are 1-3. What were your biggest takeaways from the Syracuse game?
Number one, in my opinion, was those throwback jerseys need to be permanent.
Yes.
We'll get into the analysis of the game, but I love watching our team play when we wear those jerseys. So, that's not a hard-hitting take. I think everyone agrees with me there.
There's a few teams that are like that, where it's like your throwbacks are so, like, I love North Carolina's normal jerseys, but there's some jerseys that are so much better than the current jerseys, where it's like a no-brainer. Like yesterday, when I'm watching Sunday Night Football, the Seahawks,
yeah,
those Seahawks throwbacks are significantly better than their current uniforms.
Absolutely. I don't understand why it's too hard to, we trot those jerseys out every once in a while. I mean, we're not the only ones that do it. All these NFL teams, all these college teams do it, but when there's so much fan engagement and positivity around these jerseys, I don't know why they just don't do it all the time. But not my decision. Anyway, all right. Look, I was high on the Heels last week, even though we lost to Virginia, and I said our stock's trending up, and same thing. This is the kind of win in the play style that I expected coming into the season from our teams. Semi-efficient offense, able to put some points on the board, regardless of the opponent. Very sound defense, very adequate special teams, win the turnover battle, few penalties, just play like a clean game across the board. And that's what we did. I'm going to start with Gio. I thought he had his most efficient game as a Tar Heel. The thing that stuck out to me, because in last week's podcast, I was like, he hasn't showed me much juice as a runner, and he made some good plays with his legs, especially starting on the first drive. So give him credit when he plays well, and I thought he took care of the football. He delivered it where it needed to go, and he made some plays with his legs. Another thing that I noticed from our offense was our gap scheme runs. I think we kind of hit our stride with our gap scheme runs where we're pulling multiple guys along the offensive line, counters, powers, things of that nature. I thought we were very successful in that. Defensively, it doesn't go unnoticed. I don't care who they start at quarterback. I know Syracuse started a true freshman walk-on Laxbro at quarterback.
What a sentence.
I mean, I've never seen that. I don't think anyone has in college football, but you can't control who the opposing team starts, and your job is to defend them to the best of your ability and make them look, not good. And that's exactly what we did. We've seen it many times before where we play a good athlete at quarterback and we let them run for 100 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. And that was not the case in this game. So, we responded well from the opening miscue of, the fumble in the first quarter where Syracuse ran it back and scored a touchdown. We kind of let them in the game with that momentum play, but we were able to stop it right away. And, this game was close into the third quarter, but we made winning plays to win the game. And that cannot go unnoticed. I'm very proud of the progress our team has made. There's development from all positions all over the field, offense, defense, special teams. Our players are noticeably getting better. The guys that are in there playing majority of the game have gotten better over the last few weeks. And, we're going to call a spade. And when we're playing well, we need to give credit to the players and coaching staff that are putting this product in the field. And I was proud to be a North Carolina Tar Heel on Friday when I watched that game. I was proud of the product we put on the field. And, that's kind of my opening thoughts.
Yeah. To echo off your points, I would say progress is going to be the word of the day, the word of this podcast, because this is a North Carolina team that has looked better on a week-to-week basis. If you're judging it by the whole season, yes, a lot of people got a bad taste in their mouth when Carolina gets run off the field by TCU in the opener, when they get run off the field at UCF, when they don't look competitive from the start against a Clemson team. But since that second bye week, you look at the Cal game, you look at the Virginia game, and now you look at the Syracuse game, we're about 2 plays away from Carolina being 3-0 over that stretch. And it's not even a stretch to say like, oh, if this one play goes differently, maybe Carolina wins that. Like, no, if Carolina doesn't fumble on the goal line against Cal, they win that game. If Carolina gets the 2-point conversion against Virginia in overtime, they win that game. Syracuse, they really left no doubt in that second half. And Schott, I think you started to hit on it. One of the biggest things for me watching this game, especially from, if I'm thinking of it with like a fan mentality, it would be that first drive where Carolina gets all the way to the 1-yard line. They can't punch it in. They call a timeout because they're trying to get their play right. They come out of that timeout. They false start. They have to settle for the field goal. And now in your mind, you're like, okay, not ideal, but Carolina's supposed to be this disciplined team. Carolina's shooting themselves in the foot. In conference play, you can't really do that and expect to win. Fast forward to the defense is playing well. Carolina gets the ball. It looks like they're driving. Shamar Easter fumbles. And that's when it kind of hit in like the, okay, here we go again mentality. And credit to this North Carolina team, instead of having that woe is me, here we go again mentality, from that moment on, North Carolina absolutely dominated the Syracuse team. And Syracuse, without that fumble return for a touchdown, their offense was non-existent the entire game.
Yeah, absolutely. I always talk about the points that our defense lets up, and that's a huge statistic. And yeah, they let up 3 points in this game. And again, there was an unexperienced quarterback starting for Syracuse, but the rest of the offensive line and skill skill position players had produced earlier in the season. So the thing that I looked for in our defense, regardless of who was at quarterback, was when Syracuse was running routes and, whether it was first, second, third down, they're running all these different route concepts. We had sticky coverage. We were in position to make plays when the quarterback threw the ball. Regardless of whether there was a really accurate, good quarterback in the game, we were all over the receivers. Give credit to our defensive backs, our linebackers, and our defensive line for dominating. The one note I wanted to make was Jaden Patterson, cornerback 18, who's come in and played really well over the last couple of weeks. One of the big plays I noticed from him, and this is just me, when I'm watching the game, I take notes on my notes app on my iPhone just so I can, jot down some things to talk about on the pod later. And one of the things that stuck out to me was they ran a corner blitz. It was in the first defensive drive of the game, and he's covering the outside receiver. The outside receiver goes in motion, and as soon as he goes in motion, he times up his blitz and comes off the edge right on the snap of the ball. And they're running a counter run back into him. And he knifes into the backfield with a pulling guard at him. And then not only does he hit the running back, he takes him down behind the line of scrimmage. So this one specific play, I don't know if a lot of people remember that play, but it sticks out to me. It says a lot about, one, his ability, two, the coaching in terms of, okay, we're going to teach this kid on motion, game plan specific. When they motion, I'm going to go get to the line of scrimmage and time up the snap. And then also his physical ability to, maneuver around an offensive lineman and then take down an ACC running back in the backfield. You see it all the time. A cornerback blitzes, he's in position, misses the sack or the run blitz, but he did everything right on that play. And he's a guy that hasn't played a ton of snaps this season. Obviously, he's played more this past couple of weeks, but that one play is highlighting to me of, okay, he's gotten better. We're coaching him to do the right things, and he's got the physical ability to get it done. So that's just, obviously I'm talking about one play that we don't have film up of, but that's one play that sticks out to me of like, that's how our defense is playing. We're getting production from all levels of the defense, and we're coaching the correct ways to blitz, to tackle, all the things associated with it.
Yeah, Carolina on Pro Football Focus, they're credited with 8 missed tackles. So 8 missed tackles in a conference game, you're going to win more often than not when you're getting that level of coaching and tackling efficiency from your defense. Shot, the ACC Players of the Week got announced, and the Defensive Lineman of the Week, who has been a blessing for this North Carolina team, his performance, Melkart Abujade, he wrecks havoc in this Syracuse game. His imprint was all over the game. That obviously led to him getting those recognitions on ESPN. He's credited with 6 tackles, 2.5 tackles for a loss, and then 2 sacks. What have you seen from him over the past month or so, where he looks like one of the best edge players for not only North Carolina but the ACC in general?
The one thing that sticks out to me about him is his motor. He is always running, and as a defensive lineman, your motor's got to run hot. He's playing 30, 40 snaps a night, but each time he steps on the field, he is running it hot. That sack he had in the third quarter where he forced a fumble. He's the opposite defensive end. He flushes the quarterback out to his left, so he's chasing him down, 40 yards across the field. And not only does he sack him, but he is actively going to swipe at the ball. A lot of defensive linemen get in that position, and they're like, I'm going to get this sack from behind. He's an experienced player, and he's taught well that when he's chasing from behind and the ball is exposed to him, I'm going to rake at the ball, because a sack is one thing, but a sack fumble changes the game. So, he had the wherewithal to, sack the quarterback, but knock the ball out, and the athletic ability to maneuver around the edge, chase a good athlete down and knock the ball out. The game was well within, it was, a 1 or 2 possession game at that point. But then also the recovery by the defensive lineman, I forget his name, but the big guy chasing the ball as well, that, he looked like a receiver catching the ball and kind of toe tapping in. And all the Syracuse coaches are like, no, 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 he's out. But after review, I mean, he had 2 feet in. He dragged those feet well, and so again, the motor our defensive line is playing with is fun to see. And yes, that's a player's choice to play really hard, but that to me, because I've been on that side of it, that is coaches motivating and coaching that into the players. You know, they're like, look, we're not going to play you if you don't play hard. So they are motivating them and constantly showing them that if you play hard, good things will happen. And, you know, defensive line is the main position where if you just strain and run to the ball and keep working, whether you think you have a sack or not, if you keep pursuing the ball, like, good things will happen. And, you know, that's a testament to both coaches and players, you know, correcting that from prior weeks. So that was good to see.
When you talk about defensive linemen playing with a motor, I think the best example in recent Carolina football history is somebody like Kamon Rucker, because Kamon Rucker on paper, nothing about his measurables is really going to stand out. But then you would watch him on Saturdays, and he would always be one of the first guys that pops on film. So for me, when I'm watching Melkart Abujade, like, if you would have told me going into the season that we're in week 10 and he would be leading the ACC in sacks, I'm not sure really any person that covers this team, anybody that cares about this team could have saw this coming, unless your last name was somebody like Melkart Abujade and you had that self-belief in yourself. But Schott, I'm looking at the defensive grades before we take a break and then talk offense. The highest graded players on Pro Football Focus on Carolina's defense, Isaiah Johnson at the nose tackle position was a 79.9. Caleb Cost, with a lot of sticky coverage downfield, was a 75.8. Greg Smith.
And before you go to the next guy, Caleb Cost has been a criticized player from this podcast, from the message boards, et cetera, over the last 2 years. But he tackled as well in this game as I've seen him, and he covered as well. Look, he's playing nickel, he's playing outside corner. So, look, more reps. That guy's a good athlete. He came to college playing football and baseball. He's got the physical tools, and his development is very clear to me.
Greg Smith was third at that safety position, the transfer from Florida, where he placed 33 snaps. You're looking at, we talked about it last week on the podcast, players that weren't playing in the beginning of the season, and now they're playing a big role for this North Carolina defense that's playing well. He played 3 snaps in the TCU game. He played 16 in Charlotte, 18 in Richmond, 14 in Clemson, and then something switched to where he's now playing, 20, 30 snaps a game for this defense. And again, you have to give credit to the coaches for identifying that and realizing, hey, this guy's going to give our team a better chance. And then you have to give the credit to somebody like Greg Smith, who comes out there and makes the most of that opportunity. And then the fourth, so Melkart was fifth with a 67.9 for players that played at least 20 snaps. But the fourth player, again, somebody who has been criticized both on the podcast and on the message boards, Marcus Allen. Marcus Allen, you can't mention how good the defense played against Syracuse without mentioning somebody like Marcus Allen and what that secondary has done. Schott,
Yeah.
we've been critical at times of Gio Lopez and trying to hold Gio Lopez to a higher standard, just because I think we saw what Gio Lopez could do at South Alabama and wanting to see it translate more at North Carolina. But Friday was an example of it could always be worse, because I'm watching that Syracuse quarterback and I felt bad for him, because they're saying he's a freshman walk-on quarterback that's on the lacrosse team. I'm trying to figure out how that even makes sense. But when they said that, I'm like, oh man, this is a game where that freshman walk-on lacrosse quarterback, he might as well have been somebody bleeding in the ocean, and Bill Belichick and this staff is just swimming around him like sharks in the water.
It could have gone one of two ways. It could have gone that way, or it could have been like this guy is a complete no-namer and he established his name in college football, his welcome to, college football moment where he puts up 300 yards and 27 points against, a depleted UNC defense. So we held our own in that regard, and I'm glad it was the result that that actually happened. There's one other thing I want to talk about the D-line, okay? So we had Tyler Thompson had a nice sack. Melcart had two, and I think we had one other one. But our D-line is getting pressure on the quarterback, and they're creating sacks and havoc plays, not from these schemed up pressures. We are creating havoc in the backfield with 3 and 4 man pass rushes where it's just 1-on-1 or, 2-on-1, and our guys are beating the opposing offensive lines. They are working a repertoire of moves. They're winning with speed, with power, with effort. And it's nothing, you watch the Seahawks last night. Mike McDonald is scheming up all these pressures where someone comes free. That's not happening. It is just sheer technique, power, explosiveness, effort, etc. So that's a great thing to see, because when you do that, when you rush 3 or 4, you maximize your coverage. And that's exactly what we did. If we can get home with 3 or 4 guys, it's a simple numbers game. There's either 8 guys in coverage or 7 guys in coverage. And if you have 7 or 8 guys covering 4 to 5 eligible receivers, you're going to outnumber them, and you're going to win a lot more games than you're not.
Carolina holds Syracuse to a season low 147 yards. I can't remember the last time I heard a Carolina defense holding an opponent to 147 yards or less. But quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Johnny T-Shirt. If you're going to be in Chapel Hill, you can visit Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street. And if not, no worries. You can go online to johnnytshirt.com. They have everything that the Carolina fan could want: the hats, the T-shirts, the jerseys, you name it, they've got it. I'm looking on their website now, Shot. They still have a lot of great football gear. Basketball season is starting now. They have a lot of great basketball gear. And don't forget, Inside Carolina premium subscribers save 10% off their orders at Johnny T-Shirt. Great people, great customer service. Support the people that support us. Shot, switching sides, I think the best place to start for this game, just because of how criticized he's been, would be Gio Lopez. Because to echo some of your points in the opening statement, I think one of the biggest problems with Gio Lopez is that the entire offseason he was advertised as this dual threat quarterback. And then when you're seeing him, there's sometimes where it feels like he's late on throws. It feels like he can't really make all the throws that you would want a power forward quarterback to make. So then you're like, okay, he has to lean more on the running game. And then you're watching him the first couple of games, and he really wasn't much of a threat in the run game. Syracuse was the most confident he looked at the quarterback position. And I think if you ask the North Carolina staff when they offer Gio Lopez, when they bring Gio Lopez to Chapel Hill, what does it look like? That Syracuse game is a pretty good blueprint for Gio Lopez moving forward.
Absolutely. I said it in my opening statement of how efficient he was with the ball. He showed from the first drive that he was, able to extend plays with his legs and pick up first downs with his legs. Before I forget, I want to make this point about the offense. And this was, the most exciting thing for me. When I watch these games, even if most of the time I like to watch them by myself, just so I can lock in, I don't have to talk to anybody. I can put all my focus into North Carolina football because I'm very passionate about it. When I watched this game in the fourth quarter, I could have turned it off. We were up 17 points, on our final drive. But what I was most excited about was there's 4 minutes to go and we could just kneel the ball. We could run out the clock, but we moved the ball all the way down the field, essentially into the Syracuse red zone, but we were still imposing our will as an offense. We were moving people off the line of scrimmage. Our running backs were running hard. And then we get to 4th and 13 and they get a pressure on Gio. He's running to his left and completes a strike to Jordan Shipp when the game is just out of hand. Like that 4th down play didn't matter. If we turn the ball over or we throw it out of bounds, Syracuse is not going to win that game. We're up 17 and they would get the ball with 2 minutes to go or whatever. but our offense was competing their ass off till the final whistle. And, that's a mentality of that we've kind of instilled in our players. And it was very, very apparent. So that to me was a winning drive from our offense when the game was out of hand. So, obviously we were talking about Gio, but I had to get that point before I forgot, because that to me, regardless of all the other things, how efficient Gio was, et cetera, he was leading his team down when the game didn't really matter. And he was, picking up first downs. Offensive line was still humming. Our running backs were running hard. Our receivers are still playing hard till the end of the game. So, that's a true culture mindset thing. And I was very encouraged by that. Back to Gio, the number one thing I look for in a quarterback is just his ability to be a point guard. Move the chains, be efficient, throw the ball where the coverage dictates. And that's what Gio did. Obviously we had some mishaps in the red zone, by getting down to the goal line and not scoring. Those things can be fixed. That's both play calling and quarterback play. But he didn't have any turnovers. He was efficient with the ball, and he impressed me. So do I think he's the future? I'm not going to completely change my stance on that, but you got to give credit when he plays a great game, and tip my cap to him, because he looked like a quarterback that we can win with this season for sure.
I think the biggest thing that I've noticed with Gio Lopez is something that we've kind of been harping on. We're pretty confident Jordan Shipp is a good ACC receiver. We're pretty confident that Kobe Paysour is a good ACC receiver. We've seen flashes from those two. If you're a quarterback, hey, trust that those guys are going to make plays and find as many ways to get those guys the ball as early and often as possible, and let that help you flow into your offense. And somebody like Damon June, who if you give a little of maybe like a 5-yard pass to Damon June, there's a chance Damon June can take it 70 yards, and you get all 70 of those yards on your passing stats when he does the rest. Overall, I agree with you. I'm not really changing my stance on where I'm at with Gio Lopez and wanting to commit to him being the quarterback, because I'm looking at total QBR in the ACC. Out of the 18 quarterbacks that qualify, Gio Lopez is 16th. Only Stanford and Syracuse QBRs are worse this season. And if anything, I think the past 3 games have showed me, with the way the defense is playing, if Carolina had gotten some of the quarterbacks that they were targeting, they were in the Fernando Mendoza conversations, they were in the John Mateer conversations. Those quarterbacks, from all accounts, North Carolina's NIL offers were competitive. So if you go into next offseason with that mindset of, hey, North Carolina has the backing from its donors, from its NIL program, to go out and try to land you one of those quarterbacks. If Carolina has one of those quarterbacks and you pair it with the way that this defense is playing now, you're talking about a team that can win the ACC. You're looking around the ACC, Clemson, hey, even though they rolled North Carolina, they stink. You're looking at Miami. We could spend a whole another 5 minutes on this Miami team. Their season's essentially over for their expectations, but I can guarantee you right now, we're recording this November 3rd. I can guarantee you right now, Miami's going to be the 2026 ACC title favorite, and they will be a top 15 preseason team. And then come November, we'll be wondering again, what happened to this Miami team?
I mean, we took UVA to overtime, and they're the ACC leader right now with Georgia Tech losing. So, there's razor thin margins, and we're right there. And 4 weeks ago, that was not the case. We were down. The whole fan base was down. But look, I'm very encouraged with what I've seen the last few weeks. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with Gio. He's got to realize, and I think he has realized, who are my best 3 offensive weapons? I'm going to get them the ball as many times as I can. Shipp, Paysour, and Damon June. And credit to the offensive staff for realizing that as well. Okay, we're going to feed them the ball. Those 3 guys need to get, 75% of our offensive touches. And that's exactly what happened in this game. And speaking of DeMond June, obviously that was his breakout game. He's had good games this season, but what encouraged me the most about him was his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I get it. He had 2 catches. One, obviously he took that screen for 75 yards and a touchdown. But was his ability to, in the gap scheme runs, those require from the running back position more feel. You got to feel the holes. You got to make quick cuts, split second decisions. And he was able to do that. And then obviously he's got the physical stature to run through guys. And he showed, really good footwork and vision. And he showed more burst than I've seen before. So, that was his best game as a Tar Heel. And I'm very excited about him going forward.
Schott, what did you think about North Carolina's third down and red zone offense and how that kind of played into North Carolina's success? Because they were 4 of 13 on third down, but when you're talking about those conversions, you do have to throw in fourth down, and North Carolina was 2 for 2 on fourth down, and seemingly outside of that first possession, played a bit of a cleaner game when it comes to red zone offense.
Yeah, in my opinion, third and fourth down and red zone and goal line offense is more of an indication on the coaching staff than the actual players. Because in those critical situations, that requires more coaching and scheme to come up with good plays because it's harder to succeed on those downs. So one, I'd like more creativity and a better consistent philosophy on those key situations, third, fourth, red zone, goal line. So, that's more of not a shot at the coaching staff, but like that's an indictment on them of they need to come up with better schemes for us to produce. Obviously, the players are out there, they have to execute the play. But an interesting stat I saw was in the first half, we were 1 for 6 on our first 6 third downs, and the average distance to gain was like 3.5 yards. Which to me is, third and medium, third and short, that's not a lot of distance to convert, especially at that low of a clip. So that's something we got to get figured out because we're definitely leaving points on the board. And, that's something we got to get fixed. But for us to convert 1 of 6 third downs with an average distance of 3.5 yards, that's not a long distance to go because we have a quarterback that can get 3 to 4 yards with his legs. We're not running concept. We're running more down the field concepts than we are trying to get 3 to 4 yards. We got to have quick hitters where it's not, our average distance is in 3rd and 11, which is a lot harder to convert, obviously. But so in my opinion, that's more of an indictment on our offensive staff of like, look, we need to come up with creative ways to get 3 to 4 to 5 yards on third down, and we need to figure out how we can score in the red zone and goal line and short yardage distance stuff. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Carolina back in action this Saturday in Kenan Stadium in Chapel Hill, 4:30 p.m. kickoff. Schott, the CW. Carolina makes its return on the CW network.
Hopefully we can watch it.
Yeah, YouTube TV and I don't know if the CW is part of the Disney package. I would assume they're not. But YouTube TV and Disney, listen, I don't care whose fault it is. What I need them to do is stop blaming each other, get in a room, and not come out until they figure it out.
I'm all on board with that. All on board.
Carolina, 7.5 point favorite right now on FanDuel, a minus 295 money line favorite. So, Schott, it's trending in the direction of next week. We should be talking about a win. You predicted Carolina wins 4 of the next 5 games. And for your prediction, this is one that almost has to be a win.
So I think I said we're guaranteed to win 3.
Okay.
And anything
3 of 5?
3 of 5. Anything on top of that's gravy, but I think we can win. I think all of them are winnable. Obviously, NC State goes and beats Georgia Tech and has a good performance there, but they're very up and down. I'm sticking with it. I think we put on another good performance again. I think we beat Stanford by double digits. I think it's, a 10 to 14 point win. And, I saw that Stanford's starting a new quarterback. So let's get after a young guy that hasn't played a bunch of football. I think our fans should be rallied around these guys that they haven't let a couple losses deter their confidence or their ability to play hard. And, as a fan, as a former player, I can always respect that. Even when the season isn't going your way, they're continuing to chop wood. So our fans need to show up and support because, the players, they have a duty to perform and get better. And we got a duty to show up and support. So
interesting that North Carolina doesn't leave the state of North Carolina anymore this season. Home against Stanford, on the road at Wake Forest, home against Duke, and then on the road at NC State. So light travel schedules for this North Carolina team. Shot, when you mentioned the Stanford quarterback switch, the old Carolina in me, that still does kind of trigger me a bit, where you hear quarterback switch and you're like, oh no, like this is the chance for somebody else to make their name. But we've seen with Belichick that maybe hearing quarterback switch should be a positive thing for North Carolina.
I think it's boding well in our favor. So I'm going to take the optimistic approach and continue to believe that our defensive staff, regardless, they don't have much tape on the guy, but they can figure out ways to, make his life miserable and, put him in uncomfortable situations where, that the opposing offense isn't on timing, isn't on rhythm. And, we find ways to exploit protections and really put a good game plan together.
We'll see how it goes this Saturday. Me and Schott will be back next week to break it all down. Schott, man, appreciate the time as always, and appreciate everybody watching and listening.
Appreciate everybody.